Good afternoon. Jimmy Cosenza here in Chicago. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. Get ready to watch Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes play Kansas. Two top teams. Sometimes the college games are even better than the NFL football games. Got a very interesting story today. We're going to talk about what happened to the Chicago mob. Sadly, the Chicago outfit story is over. Done. Put a fork in it. Like my dad told me after the Carlisi trial, don't feel sorry for these guys, Jimmy. They had a hell of a run. And he was right. The Chicago mob, the Chicago outfit, had one hell of a run. Starting in the early mid-1920s during Prohibition, all the way up to the 90s. They made hundreds of millions of dollars. One of the richest, most successful, feared crime families in the country. I'll put the Chicago outfit up against any family in Boston, any of the five families in New York, Detroit, Philly, etc. If you look at my thumbnail behind me, this photo, the Last Supper photo they called it. Don't let their smiling, handsome faces fool you. These guys look like they could be your dad, your uncle, your grandpa. In this photo, you're looking at some of the most powerful men in the country at the time. You got Joey Aiuppa, boss of Chicago outfit, Dominic DeBella, Vince Solano, Al Pilato, Jack Cerrone, Joe Lombardo, Turk Torello, Cesar DeVarco. There's Black Joe Amato, and Tony Accardo. This is the top brass, the leaders of the Chicago outfit. The prosecution used this photo in court to say this was the making ceremony of Joey Lombardo. As you can see, Joey's the only one in a suit, standing up with a drink and a big smile on his face. But Joey denied taking part of any making ceremony. He denied being a member of organized crime. He even denied being boss of the Grand Avenue crew and said that George Bush and Dick Cheney had a bigger crew. Joey said the only thing he was guilty was operating the largest remote dice game in the city. But this is a great photo. All these men, none of these men were killed. Most of them died in jail. Some of them died of natural causes. But this was the heart, the leadership of the Chicago outfit back in the day. Now we're going to go back and talk about the early days. Prohibition, right? Public enemy number one, Scarface. Al Capone, he was the most notorious gangster in the history of organized crime. This guy shelved New York City, probably to save his life. He comes to Chicago in the mid-20s and sets up shop. But Capone was very smart. He surrounded himself with great leaders, capable men, mad hatters, men he could trust. Guys like Tony Accardo, Jake Guzak, Murray the Hump, Sam Giancana, Gus Alex, Frankie Ferraro, and others. Al Capone took over the rackets, went to war with the Irish gang, the Jewish gang, and other Italian gangs. Made millions of dollars, and immediately took some of that money and started bribing all the cops, all the judges, all the aldermen and politicians. So the Chicago outfit, from early on, had most of the cops, judges, and politicians on their payroll. That's one thing that separated the outfit from New York, Philly, and Boston. The Chicago outfit had all your political connections. Now, the government could never really indict Al Capone. They could never really catch him on anything. They eventually nailed him on tax evasion. He was convicted, did 10 years in prison at the young age of 33 years old. When he was released from prison, he died of a nasty disease. He still has a couple homes in Chicago on the south side and also a home in Miami that you could check out. But Al Capone, when he died, he left the Chicago outfit in very good shape. Now, what I love about the Chicago outfit was their reputation. Years ago, if you were on vacation, say you're in Vegas, hanging out at the pool, and you met people, and you told them you were from Chicago, you should see the reaction you would get. Some of them were shocked. Most of them loved it. Some of them were intimidated, a little nervous, a little scared. That's what kind of reputation we had. Now I'm not so sure. In the early 90s, I was very fortunate to go to beautiful Stockholm, Sweden, and I was touring the manufacturing plant with the president of the company, and we saw two older gentlemen outside on a cigarette break, and when he introduced me, James, this is James from Chicago, the two old men stood up. You could see the look on their face. It looked like they saw a ghost. They were taken back. The one pointed a motion finger with a gun, like a gun with his finger, and they said, Al Capone, gangster. I said, no, mafia. But it was kind of funny that here I am in Stockholm, Sweden, and just the mention of Chicago, these two old-timers associated that with the Chicago mob, with Al Capone. But that's what kind of reputation Chicago had, not only in the country, but all over the world. Now, the Chicago outfit, Al Capone's gang took over the Prohibition days. They made all the money on alcohol, bootlegging, right? Even the Kennedy family was involved in this, as well as organized crime families in Detroit, Philly, New York, Boston. All gangsters started out in the bootlegging business. Al Capone had major machine gun wars, leaving dead bodies, bloodshed all over the streets of Chicago with the Jewish gang, Jaime Weiss, and the Irish gang, the Bugs Moran gang. We all know the history. Al Capone took that over with force. Now, the largest number one racket in the Chicago outfit back then, even till this day, is gambling. All the crews made hundreds of millions of dollars gambling, whether it be full-blown casinos. For example, when they would close the restaurants in Greektown and Chinatown, they would shut them down and reopen the private casinos. They had all kinds of high-end card games. For example, Carlisi's crew, they would have high-stake poker games at various hotels with food, with women, with loan sharks available to loan the gamblers money. They had the video poker machine, slot machine business tied up. You had the Marcello brothers operated that. Then when they got pinched at the Family Secrets trial, Mike Sarno's crew started running the multi-million-dollar video poker machine business. You've had dice games like Joe Lombardo used to run, crooked card games, roulette games, you name it, Baccarat, Chicago outfit, bookmaking. I mean, look, you had Nicky Ferriola making, what was it, $150,000 a week or a couple $100,000 a month for Frank Calabrese. He was running Frank Calabrese's book when Frankie was locked up. But this is the number one racket, the number one moneymaker for the Chicago mob was gambling. Also, one of the oldest rackets back then, even today, is prostitution. I remember going to Chinatown in a few spots up and down Chicago Avenue where you can get a massage and end up with a happy ending. Years ago, we used to go to a mobbed up restaurant called La Luce over there on Lake and Ogden in the Grand Avenue neighborhood. We would have legendary Super Bowl parties, gambling, cigars, delicious spread, and then you'd go upstairs if you wanted, and there was plenty of girls available. The PK crew, one of my friends, they operated a full-blown escort service right there in the Grand Avenue neighborhood. I had no idea. You'll see working girls out and about, depending on where you hang out, Rush Street, other nightclubs and bars, but prostitution was one of the oldest rackets, and it was a big money maker for the Chicago outfit back in the day. Now, when Al Capone died, he left the Chicago outfit in great hands with these two gentlemen here. These are two of the most powerful gangsters, mob bosses in the history of Cosa Nostra. You got Paul Ricca and Tony Accardo. Now, everyone thinks Tony Accardo was the boss of Chicago outfit, but in reality, it was Paul Ricca. These guys were very humble, very low-key outfit bosses, great leaders. Unfortunately, when Paul Ricca was in prison, Tony Accardo would pose, dress up as his lawyer, go to visit him in prison, and they would talk outfit business. But these guys took the Chicago mob to the next level. And just like Al Capone, they continue to bribe all the policemen, all the state officials, all the aldermen, all the judges and politicians. They demanded that their crew did not get involved in narcotics and that they kept a low profile. These guys made hundreds of millions of dollars in the rackets and were feared and respected by mob bosses all over the country. Paul Ricca, Paul the Waiter Ricca, and Tony the Big Tuna, Joe Batters, Tony Accardo. Now, during opening statements in one of the trials I went to, I think it was Chris Gere at the Gus Alex Trial, or not, the Sam Carlisi trial, they said that the Chicago mob made more money than U.S. Steel. They had $100 million a year criminal operation going. And I think that might be a slight embellishment, but just goes to show you, just with gambling, prostitution, the unions, rackets, extortion, Chicago Alpha made hundreds of millions of dollars. One of the richest, most successful organized crime families in the country. Chicago Outfit was also tied in or affiliated, associated with some of the biggest hits in our country. For example, you got Cuba, Fidel Castro, right? This guy was the biggest thorn in the side. A lot of people were upset with him, and the Chicago Outfit and the CIA collaborated together to assassinate him. Sam Giancana, Johnny Roselli, and others were involved, but they could never kill him. Fidel Castro outsmarted all of them. But the Chicago Outfit, as well as the CIA, plotted numerous times to assassinate this guy. Now, I hate to bring this up, really sad. One of the saddest days in our country, right next to 9/11, is the Chicago Outfit allegedly, and the CIA and maybe other members of organized crime plotted to kill President Jack Kennedy. And then years later, they also killed Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy was a real thorn in the Chicago mob's side. As we all know, Joe Kennedy cut somewhat of a deal with the Chicago Outfit guys that if Illinois votes for Kennedy's, that they would lay off some of the organized crime guys. And when President Kennedy became president, he did just the opposite. First thing he did, he hired Bobby Kennedy, and he went after all the Chicago Outfit bosses, all the New York guys, all the mob bosses in the country. He was Hoffa. He was going off. He was going after all of them aggressively, trying to lock them up. So the Chicago mob and other crime families felt like they were double crossed, and unfortunately, they killed both Kennedys. 2 unsolved murders, but I believe the Chicago Outfit was involved in both of the Kennedys' murders. What do you guys think? Another high-profile murder, if you will, is the beautiful Marilyn Monroe. She had a lot of tea on everybody. She used to hang out and party with a lot of the mob bosses and celebrities and people in Hollywood. Fast forward, I guess they were afraid she was going to talk, and it was probably Sam Giancana. Not sure, but Frankie Schweiss and possibly Tony Spilatro posed as repairmen to get into the house. Once they got into the house, they gave her a lethal shot, and she died. And they made it look like it was a suicide. Frankie Schweiss was the alleged killer of Marilyn Monroe. He bragged about it to his girlfriend. He was afraid she was going to talk. And Frankie Schweiss killed his beautiful Greek girlfriend that everybody loved, and then dumped her body in the Chicago River. But God bless Marilyn Monroe, the Kennedys, and other victims of the Chicago Outfit. But Chicago Outfit, Frankie Schweiss, possibly Tony Spilatro, were allegedly involved in the Marilyn Monroe hit. Another thing people forget is the Chicago mob had a lot of influence in Hollywood, whether it was the producers, the writers, some of the actors, some of the bigwigs, some of the rich Jews, but they controlled the projectors union and other unions. So just like in the movie Godfather, where they found the horse's head in the producer's bed, sending him a message. But the Chicago outfit controlled most of your movie productions and some of the financing. We all know Chicago outfit controlled most of the unions in our country. Hoffa was somewhat of a puppet to Chicago outfit. He did what they told him to do through the liaison Alan Dorfman. Hoffa hated the Kennedys, ran the union with an iron fist, and made millions of dollars for the Chicago mob and other crime families. We all know what happened. Hoffa eventually spent some time in prison. He got out. They bribed Nixon $2 million with the promise that Hoffa could no longer return to the union. Hoffa did not agree with that, and he wanted his union back. This was his blood, sweat, and tears. He built the Teamsters union, and he wasn't taking no for an answer. He was warned many times to back down, spend time with his grandchildren, retire. He's got millions of dollars, but he would not listen. He was too headstrong, and eventually he was killed. Till this day, 2024, Hoffa's body has never been found. Now, it's more likely than the Detroit and maybe some New York guys took him out, that they were the actual killers. There was rumors that it could have been Frank Calabrese out of the 26th Street crew. But I guarantee you, the top brass Chicago outfit gave their approval to have Hoffa taken out when he wouldn't back down. Now in Chicago, you got 50 wards. This is like 50 mayors. And Joe Lombardo on the stand broke it down to the judge and the jury on how the city of Chicago operates. You got 50 aldermen. If you want a liquor license, if you want a zoning permit, if you want a job, if you want to bribe a judge, you go see your local alderman. Joey swore that these guys run the city of Chicago. They're the movers and the shakers, not the outfit guys. But they bring this up because the Chicago outfit controlled the first ward, the most powerful ward, and pretty much had influence on every ward in Chicago. The Chicago outfit controlled all the jobs that were handed out, contracts, the bribing of officials, judges, anything that needed to get done, you had to go through the first ward, and that was the Chicago mob. You had Pat Marcy and Alderman Fred Rohde, two main members of the 26th Street crew, were in charge of the first ward. They had all the power. Speaking of power, going back to the Al Capone days, later on when Tony Accardo and Paul Ricca took it over, then it was handed down to Iupa, Carlisi, Joe Nagel. A lot of the Cook County judges were all on the mob's payroll. Years ago, they had Operation Greylord. That was hundreds of Cook County judges were caught on a wire accepting bribes, fixing cases, from parking tickets to DUIs to murders. I spoke about 2 murders where the judge was bribed for $10,000 and the defendant was found not guilty. That's how much power the Chicago outfit had. You could beat a murder rap for $10,000 if you had connections. And back to the 50 aldermen, I think over 40 of them, like 90% of the aldermen, have all been convicted of a crime. whether it be racketeering, wire fraud, bribery, extortion. So the vast majority of our aldermen, our 50 wards, are all convicted felons. That proves that Cook County is the most corrupt county in the country. Now, Chicago Outfit also controlled the entire CPD, from the top man down, Bill Hanhart, to the captains, to the lieutenants, down to some of the beat cops. The Chicago Outfit had a lot of their family members, friends, relatives that all became cops and detectives. One of the most corrupt police departments in the country, right up there with New York and LA, probably the third largest. And kind of like the two mob cops that were working for gas pipe in New York, some of the Chicago Outfit cops did murders for the Outfit guys. Lenny Patrick bragged that he had a couple cops that did heavy work. One time, a BP Amico executive had issues with mulatto, and one of the killers was a Chicago cop. So years ago, we used to say, if somebody asked Jimmy, who's the biggest gang in Chicago? We used to say the police. Or we'd say in Chicago, they'll pull you over for a broken taillight. Next thing you know, you're confessing to a murder. But the Chicago Outfit had major, major influence in the Chicago Police Department. Now we'll keep going, right? City of Chicago. I cannot tell you how many guys that I know, their family, their friends, their relatives, all have city jobs. You want to be a cop? You want to be a fireman? You want to work for City Hall? A lot of the Outfit guys, family and friends and associates work for Streets and Sanitation, the Department of Water, the Sewer Department, like Frankie Calabrese Jr. When he retrieved the gun that was used to kill Feccarata, he retrieved it out of the sewer. That gun disappeared. Junior should have been charged with that, but he never was. Why? Because he flipped and cooperated, but he doesn't talk about that. But there's so many people connected to the Chicago Outfit that all have high-paid city jobs, and most of these guys, if they don't fuck up, are going to have a nice retirement, 401, and pension with full benefits. A lot of the guys, like my landlord and other guys I know, were even lucky to get a no-show job. I remember going past the club, Joe Lombardo, Mikey Switek's old club on Grand and May, and seeing 10, 15 guys, city workers. You could see their equipment was parked and none of them were working. Same with the state. Chicago Outfit was kind of like an octopus where they had all their tentacles that reached out all over the place. All kinds of Chicago mob family members, friends, and associates got jobs in the state. Whether it was the tollway, Illinois Department of Transportation. We used to call the Illinois Tollway, their world headquarters, the Taj Mahal. A lot of Outfit people work for the state, and they also have gotten, the lucky ones, they received $1 million sweetheart contracts doing business with IDOT. So not only does Chicago Outfit control most of the jobs in the city of Chicago, but in the state as well. Now, we talked about McCormick Place. At one time, McCormick Place was one of the largest convention centers in the country. And years ago, the Chicago Outfit, a lot of their guys were in the union and worked at McCormick Place. So you could be a convicted felon, get out of prison, and immediately get a job making union scale to McCormick Place. This is a haven for Outfit guys, family, friends, and associates. And some of them actually sued. They got injured, they sued, and filed a workman's comp claim. Same with Navy Pier. A lot of Outfit guys work for McPier, also have contracts there. Vending contracts, construction contracts, forklifts from A to Z. But the Chicago Outfit has a lot of family members and friends that are all work for McCormick Place and McPier, Navy Pier. Here you got the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I worked here in the 90s. I'll never forget the first week. I was shocked to see all the outfit guys, sons, nephews, nieces, daughters, family members that all work at the Merc. And some of them were traders. Jimmy Marcello's son used to work here. Both of Sally De Laurentiis' kids worked here. Borsellino's kids worked here. Ferriola worked here. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So sadly, some of the outfit guys like Sally or Jimmy Marcello were in prison, but they were so smart. They bought a seat at the Mercantile Exchange, which was a couple $100,000 back then, and their sons became traders. Same thing with the Chicago Board of Trade right down the street. A lot of Chicago outfit sons, nephews, grandkids, relatives, associates, family all became traders, runners, trade checkers at Chicago Board of Trade. This is the highest paid profession. Some of these traders made more money than doctors, lawyers, rock stars, professional athletes. But that's what kind of influence the Chicago mob had back in the day. The Chicago Board of Trade and the Merc. But unfortunately, most of this has gone away. But these guys had a hell of a run back then. It was a hell of a lifestyle. Now we got to talk about the Teamsters pension fund. During the family secrets trial, the mob referred to this, the lawyers referred to this as the mob's golden goose. It was their piggy bank. This was worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the 70s, and the mob controlled it. Just imagine what it's worth today. But the Chicago outfit used this money to pay for their lawyers, to pay family members that were locked up, to pay their family members off, to pay off judges, to pay off cops, state officials. They also use this money to build hotel and casinos in Las Vegas. So imagine controlling the Teamsters, Central Teamsters Pension Fund. Chicago outfit also controlled the Cook County Sheriff's Department, whether it was the Cook County Sheriffs themselves or the ones that ran the jail, controlled the evidence room, worked in the court buildings. This is one of the most corrupt departments in the country. And just to show you how corrupt it is okay, on 26 in California, you have one of the oldest corrupt court buildings in the country, right next to one of the largest, oldest, most violent holding jails in the country, the Cook County Jail. So you have the Cook County Jail and the Cook County Court Building right next to each other. So they can easily transport prisoners from the jail to court. Below the court building is the evidence room. This is where they store all the evidence for the upcoming trials. Guns, weapons, drugs, cash, DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence. And years ago, not so much today, just to show you how corrupt the Cook County system was with the Chicago mob behind it. Many times evidence would go missing from the evidence room. So say there was a big trial coming up a couple weeks before the trial, the prosecution goes to the evidence room to check out a gun or check out some drugs, and it's missing. More times than not, they'd have to drop the case because this key evidence would be missing. And to add to it, some of the guns that were used in murders that were in that evidence room were taken out of the evidence room, resold on the street, and used again in a different murder. Now, how bad, how corrupt is that? Any gun that's used in a murder needs to be destroyed immediately. But these guns were taken out of the evidence room along with drugs and resold on the street. That was a key part during the family secrets investigation and trial was Chicago mob cop associate Anthony Twan Doyle from Bridgeport, from 26th Street crew. He was trying to remove the bloody glove that was left behind the John Factorata hit. That's the glove that Nick Calabrese left behind with Nicky's DNA on there. He was trying to get that glove out of evidence. Without that glove, they had nothing to tie Nick Calabrese to. Their possibly could not have, there probably wouldn't have been a family secrets trial because Nick would have never have flipped. But who knows? But anyways, that's how corrupt the Cook County Sheriff Department was. Probably still is today. Also, some older gentlemen who had connections, mob connections, would receive a gun and a Cook County Sheriff badge. So they didn't take part in training. They weren't Cook County Sheriffs, but they had a badge and gun. Those badges were given out like candy to several of the Chicago outfit guys and their connected friends. Now let's talk about Vegas, right? Going back to the 70s and 80s, Tony Spilatro. He was sent out to Vegas to look after the skim, make sure nobody messes with Lefty Rosenthal, keep his head down. But what does Tony Spilatro do? The exact opposite. First thing he does, he invites all his scumbag lowlife friends from Oak Park, Berwyn, Cicero, Chicago out there. Most of these guys never even left the neighborhoods. They come out to beautiful, warm Las Vegas, surrounded by palm trees and mountains. There's nobody there to look after them. Joe Lombardo, some of the Tony Spilatro's bosses were all in jail. So it was wide open to them. They immediately started putting the arm on everybody, robbing people, killing people, pissing off the FBI agents, pissing off the Vegas cops, drawing a lot of heat. Eventually gets back to Chicago. The outfit bosses are furious. Now some of the skim money is a little bit light. They find out Tony Spilatro is involved in drugs with a motorcycle gang. They find out he's screwing around with the Jew's wife. They had enough. They decided to kill both Michael and Tony Spilatro. As we all know, they originally were going to kill him out west, but they could never really get a good tail on the brothers. They ended up killing them at the house in Bensonville. But like the movie Casino, they had it all. They had all the money in Vegas, all types of ways to skim. They had all the women, all the big shot people. They had it all, and they fucked it all up. If it wasn't for Tony Spilatro and his crew, Chicago outfit would still be running Vegas today. You ask anybody who lives in Nevada, any of the locals, they'll say Vegas was much better when the mob ran out. Now here we got to talk about the botched burial of the Spilatro brothers. These bodies were supposed to never be found. However, the second crew, which consisted of Al Taco, John Fecarata, and a couple of guys from Chicago Heights, it was pitch black. They got spooked. They thought they heard something. They lost communication with the transmitters and the walkie-talkies, and they all scattered. So they dug a very shallow grave. A week or so later, a farmer realized his corn wasn't growing in a certain spot. He called the authorities. They dug the hole and found the two brothers. They were stripped down to their underwear. One of them, probably Michael, had some real fancy underwear on, but Tony's chest and head were completely black, blue, and purple. You couldn't even recognize his face. That's how bad he was beaten, stomped to death. After this, all hell broke loose from the Chicago outfit. This got national attention, put a lot of heat on the bosses, and slowly but surely a lot of people started getting killed in the aftermath. So not only did Tony Spilatro and his crew destroy everything that they had in Vegas, but the murder of the Spilatro brothers put the spotlight in the Chicago outfit. And that's when everything started to come apart. Now, a little bit earlier on, Chicago outfit had great leaders, right? Unlike some of the guys in New York or Philly. You had men like James Turk Torello, Korean War hero, a Marine. There's him with his beautiful wife, Tony Spilatro and his beautiful wife. Turk Torello, his life was cut too short. He had health issues. But if he didn't die of health issues, he would have went on to become the number one boss on Chicago, right there under Iupa. And he was very close with Tony Spilatro and Lefty Rosenthal. And he would not have let Tony Spilatro and things get out of hand in Vegas. Just like Joe Lombardo. Joe Lombardo was in prison as well, and he would have had more control of Tony Spilatro. Now, another great leader, just like Turk Torello, you got Joe Nago, Joe Ferriola. This is very close ally of Tony Accardo. And guys in New York and Philly had nothing but great respect for Joe Ferriola. They would refer to him and Tony Accardo for advice at times. His life was cut way too short. He had a bad heart. Ferriola had one of the best surgeons in the world that could not save him. But again, if he was alive, the outfit would be in much better shape, would have been in much better shape with a leader like this. According to Nick Calabrese, he was one of the men that personally took part in the brutal beatdown of the Spilatro brothers. But God bless Joe Ferriola, a leader whose life was cut way too short. Now, I bring up New York because, New York had 5 families. Boston had a couple families in Philly. And a couple things that separated Chicago outfit from these other crime families was, first of all, we try to keep a low profile. They learned this from guys like Iupa, Paul Ricca, Tony Accardo. Second of all, they weren't involved in drugs. Rather than have 2, 3, 4, 5 families fighting each other, Chicago outfit was one family, one glove, one fist. Chicago outfit controlled a lot of the politicians, judges, aldermen, cops. With the New York, Boston, Philly didn't have those political connections that the Chicago outfit had. Chicago outfit controlled pretty much everything west of the Mississippi. Now here you got Joey Iupa, gotta love the shirt, JB, and Jack Cerrone. 3 of the most powerful, feared members of organized crime, 3 of the top brass of Chicago outfit. And this is when it all started to fall. This man retired, stepped back, made his millions, was no more involved in the day-to-day operations. And he had the Strawman case. That's where Joe Lombardo, Angelo LaPetria, Jack Cerrone, Joe Iupa, who was boss at the time, along with a guy from Milwaukee and Kansas City, all got indicted during the Strawman case. That's where they were skimming a couple $1 million from 4 mobbed-up hotel casinos. So that was the start of it all, in my opinion, was the Strawman case. We lost some of the top guys, and right before he went to prison, Iupa had a meeting with Sam Carlisi and Joe Ferriola, and he said, I want them both knocked down, referring to the brothers 1 and 2. I don't care how you do it, just do it. And that's when Plan A was set into motion. But if you notice, Iupa could have said, I just want Tony clipped. But he said, I want them both knocked down, meaning even though he liked Michael Spilatro, you could tell by hunting and fishing and vacation pictures they went on together, even though he liked the brothers, he was so pissed off, especially with Tony, that he wanted them both clipped. Now, a lot of people think Michael was used as a setup guy. They promised Michael that he was going to be made just to help lure Tony, get there to make Tony a little bit more comfortable going to the meeting. But I think one of the reasons Michael Spilatro was killed because he was selling cocaine at a very, very popular restaurant, Horwat's. And Michael, as we all know, was kind of like a mob guy wannabe, flashing, throwing his brother's name around. Because they could easily just kill Tony Spilatro, but Iupa wanted both of them knocked down. I'm going to do a little show on why Michael Spilatro was killed. What do you guys think, though? But Strawman, the bosses got convicted. I think they did around 10 years in prison. Iupa comes home, dies a year later. First thing he does is raise the American flag at his mansion in Oak Brook. Jack Cerrone, same thing, died shortly when he got out of prison. Then there was a little bit of a lull. There weren't too many indictments. Chicago Alpha was back to business, making money as usual, mostly in gambling, loan sharking, a little bit of extortion. But anybody that got on the line were dealt with. If you broke any of the rules, if you were out showboating, drawing a lot of heat, if they thought you were an informant, they were going to clip you. Now, early 1990s, the very first trial I ever went to was the Gus Alex trial. There's Gus Alex walking into the Dirksen Federal Building. You could tell by the look on his face how nervous he was. It took the government years, decades to finally catch up with Gus Alex, and they got him on a real weak indictment. They were able to prove that he authorized and received kickbacks, money, from Lenny Patrick's extortion crew. I thought the charges were a little weak. Gus Alex underestimated the prosecution, and he thought nobody in the world would ever believe a low-life piece of shit like Lenny Patrick. But Gus Alex, that was a major, major blow, just as powerful as Strawman, because Gus Alex was the political fixer. He controlled the Chicago Police Department, the Cook County Sheriff, all your aldermen, all your senators. He was real tight with Vice President Spiro Agnew. So Gus Alex, when they lost Gus Alex, when he got convicted, the Chicago outfit lost a lot of his power. He was so trusted by the Chicago outfit brass, he controlled all the mob's money in Switzerland in their Swiss bank accounts. But unfortunately for Gus Alex, the jury believed Lenny Patrick. Gus Alex was convicted. I'll never forget going to that trial. And since that trial, I was hooked. I started going on most of the other mob trials shortly after that. But this was a major blow to the Chicago outfit. When they lost Gus Alex, they lost all their big-time political clout. And then following up, the government was on a roll. This is the second trial I went to shortly after the Gus Alex trial. They indicted Sam Carlisi's entire crew. As we all know, Sam Carlisi made multi-millions of dollars gambling, loan sharking. These guys had literally a gambling empire. You got Sam Carlisi here, boss of Chicago outfit. When you've got little Jimmy Marcello, Tony Zizzo, who went missing, and then you got Anthony the Hatch, a couple of the Bonavolante guys, and then a couple of other guys, I'm forgetting their name. But imagine seeing 8-10 mob guys surrounded by 10, 15 lawyers, all sitting around the defense table. I'll never forget anytime the prosecutor or one of the government's witnesses would refer to Carlisi as boss of the Chicago outfit, he would stand up and lose his temper. I also thought that Anthony the Hatch, who Joe Lopez said he could not control, he was worse than Frankie Calabrese. I thought for sure the Hatch was going to attack James Lavelli when he took the stand and testified against him. But this was a major crew back in the day, one of the most powerful crews of the Chicago outfit. And eventually their reign, their story came to an end, and they were all convicted and sent to prison. Jimmy Marcello got out after doing maybe 10, 12 years. And a couple months later, he gets a knock on the door, and they indict him on family secrets, on the murder of the Spilatro brothers. Tony Zizzo either landed or went missing over a little power struggle. He's still missing today. And the Hatch, eventually, they killed him over a power struggle right there in Lyons at the Brown's Chicken. The alleged shooter was Tough Tony Calabrese. All the other men are out of jail and hopefully behaving themselves. Now, another very big-time crew is the Rocky and Felice crew. Again, multi-million-dollar gambling operation. They had two of the biggest bookies in the country working for them, Robert Plummer and Hal Smith. Hal Smith, on a good weekend, was bringing in $450,000 a night. They made hundreds of millions of dollars just in gambling and loan sharking. But unfortunately, Rocky's crew had a mole, a snitch, a rat in the crew, a high-ranking lieutenant, BJ Blowjob Jehoda, got in a little trouble, owed a lot of money rather than pay his dues and do some time in prison. Jehoda decided to inform, cooperate, and actually wear a wire His testimony convicted Rocky and Felice, Sally De Laurentiis, Bobby Bellavia, Bobby Salerno, and Louis Tomatoes. You can see Rocky and his crew being escorted from the court building, getting on the bus, going back to the MCC. But this was a major blow to the Chicago outfit because they lost a lot of men. Probably the biggest blow to the Chicago outfit, now we're talking about the demise, the downfall, is when Bob Cooley, a corrupt lawyer, he wore a wire and testified against Harry Allman, Butchie, some of the Wild Bunch guys, and the First Ward. You got Alderman Fred Rohde. I went to his trial. This guy's like 5'2", but one of the most powerful men in the city and the state. And then the main man, Pat Marcy. Both made members of the 26th Street crew, organized crime. But these guys controlled the entire city. If you want a liquor license, go to Counselor's Row and see these men. If you want a city job, a no-so job, go see Pat Marcy or Alderman Fred Rohde. If you want to bribe a judge, you need a judge bribe, zoning, whatever you needed done in this city, these were the movers and shakers. And if you got out of line, if you crossed them, you definitely felt their wrath. But when Bob Cooley brought down the entire First Ward, this is what pretty much crippled the Chicago outfit. After losing Gus Alex, they lost all their political clout, which no longer made them unique. Then they were more like a crime family like Philly, Detroit. They were vulnerable. They didn't have the politicians and the police to protect them. So Bob Cooley's testimony, Lenny Patrick's testimony, helped destroy the Chicago outfit. They lost all their political connections. And then again, it got quiet for some years. But when it's quiet, usually means there's an investigation going on. Fast forward 2005, 2007, you got the Family Secrets Trial. We all know the story. Junior Calabrese wrote a letter saying he wanted to bring down his father and lock him up for life. They confronted Nick Calabrese with DNA on the bloody glove left over in the Faccarati case. They threatened him with the electrical chair. So Nick Calabrese, made member of the Chicago outfit of the 26th Street crew, the only made member of the Chicago outfit ever to testify. He testified to 14 murders. He also gave the government a who's who from A to Z, past, present, and future of the Chicago outfit. His testimony, his cooperation destroyed what was left of the Chicago outfit. And then after the Family Secrets trial, there was a couple smaller trials. For example, the Mike Sarno crew. Sarno was very good friends with Bobby Salerno. He was kind of schooled from Bobby Salerno. Large took over the video poker business left behind by Mikey and Jimmy Marcello. He had problems with this guy, VD. This guy was not backing down. Large was affiliated with Mark Polchin, high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang, and they had kind of like a Midwestern burglary crew. They were fencing the stolen goods through a pawn shop, Goldberg Jewelers, right there in Roosevelt and Cicero. But to make a long story short, the government's informant, a member of the crew, a real lowlife, Mark Hale, decided to wear a wire and actually got one of the co-defendants, Samuel Vopendenzo, 86 years old, Navy war guy, war hero. He got him on tape bragging about the bomb. Imagine an 86-year-old man talking about a bomb that he made. But they got him on tape. He was also referring to Mike Sarno as boss of the crew, along with other witnesses that kept saying Mike Sarno was boss of the crew. I thought the evidence against Large was weak. I definitely found reasonable doubt. But unfortunately, Large and all the defendants were found guilty. I think Mike Sarno received like a 25 to 30 year sentence, which is a bit harsh. Mark Polchman got 60 years. No guns, no drugs. Both defendants were overcharged. Hopefully Mike Sarno could come home on compassionate release to be with his family. This man is no longer a threat. Mark Polchman got his sentence reduced to 30, and hopefully he can come home to his family in 10 years. But this was, again, a big-time blow to what was left of the Chicago outfit when the Large crew got indicted. Now, as I mentioned, it's a little out of line, but Chicago mob made a ton of money just in Chinatown alone. Not only all the gambling and loan sharking that went on, as well as the massage parlors and prostitution, but Frankie Schweiss and Angelo the Bull, boss of the 26th Street crew, extorted like the community of Chinatown. It's called like Liang or Miang or something like that. But they extorted hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they used that money to build Angelo's Italian American Social Club, also to pay off judges, cops, and their attorney fees. Now, not just the city of Chicago, but the Chicago outfit had major influence and power in the surrounding suburbs, towns like Willow Springs, Summit, Bridgeview, Stone Park, Melrose Park, Elmwood Park, Berwyn, Oak Park, and Rosemont. The mayor of Rosemont was a mob guy associate, Donald Stevens, the old man. He was constantly seen out and about whining and dining with DeFranco, Joe Lombardo, Joey the Builder, but he denied any ties to organized crime. If you drive through Rosemont, you could just tell it's a mobbed up town because they've got a casino there, a theater, a convention, Rosemont Horizon for concerts. They've got all kinds of high-end restaurants, hotels, high-end mall. I mean, it's like a mini Vegas there. But what was important to the outfit about Rosemont was it's right next to O'Hare. So again, the Chicago outfit could get a lot of their family members, friends, jobs at O'Hare Airport, but more importantly, a lot of the contracts in Rosemont and O'Hare. But this was a big-time cash cow for the Chicago outfit, the town of Rosemont. Now we'll keep going. So much money. These guys made hundreds of millions of dollars. Another scam they had going with the help of the Irish gang, Mayor Daley's gang. You had the hire truck program. Now, there's just too many outfit guys, family members, and associates that were involved in this. They all made a couple $1 million, had certain contracts with the city of Chicago, and some of them did actually no work at all. But I remember my late friend, Rocky Lamantia, used to complain to me. He had a trucking company called Galaxia, and his wife named, and when this all came down, he was crying that, oh, Jimmy, they took away my trucks. But he forgot to mention the couple $1 million deals that he had going on with the city of Chicago. So the hire truck program made millions of dollars for Mayor Daley and his friends, and a lot of Chicago outfit guys and their friends. But again, nothing good lasts forever. Eventually, this all came to an end. A couple guys got clipped. A couple guys went to jail. And that's over with. And even before that, you had Palumbo, Orange Crush. Palumbo, definitely a made member, powerful heavyweight in the Chicago outfit, going back to the Battaglia, Jack Cerrone, Joey Upa, Tony Accardo days. I mean, top brass. They had paved and worked on all the highways, 294, miles and miles of highway. I-55, 290, 90. They controlled. You saw their orange trucks all over the place. These guys made millions of dollars in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. And eventually they got indicted. They eventually got hit with a fine. They had to shut down their business. They couldn't compete with highway work anymore. But all they did was just change the name and open it up under a new business. But Palumbo, the earth moved with Palumbo. You don't see these guys too much anymore. But back in the day, 70s, 80s, and 90s, these guys made millions of dollars. Hopefully I'm not boring you. I'm going to try to keep it to an hour. What do you guys think, though? You guys still think the mob is active? I don't know about New York, Philly, Boston, but the Chicago outfit, that story is over, bro. And like Gotti used to tell people, real gangsters in this life in Cosa Nostra, you end up dead or in prison. Look at little Jimmy Marcello, Frank Calabrese, Nick Gio, Joe Lombardo. All these men did football number years in prison. Was it worth it? So you either ended up in prison or you ended up dead. There's no winners in this life. I'll never forget one of my friends, Paulie C. He did some time in prison, and I asked him, how did you survive the MCC? He said, Jimmy, it's part of the life. I mean, if you believe this life, if you live this life, you better expect to go to prison. This is a stand-up man here who's turned his life around. Paulie C. Now, for guys that didn't end up in jail, they ended up getting killed. For example, boss of Chicago Outfit at one time, Sam Giancana. Somebody he trusted shot him 5, 6, 7 times, killing him right there at his home in Oak Park when he was cooking peppers and sausage. Now, this is a boss that had to be taken out. Also, getting back to the Teamsters pension fund, Danny Seifert, a businessman, he was in cahoots with Milwaukee Phil, Tony Spilatro, Joe Lombardo, and others. And like Hoffa, he was warned many times to back down, back away. He didn't listen. He was about to blow the lid wide open on the Central Teamsters pension fund. Again, the mob's golden goose, the piggyback. They could not allow that to happen. And a hit team was put together. Allegedly, Joe Lombardo, Frankie Schweiss were the masked gunmen. When Frankie Schweiss tried to handcuff Danny Seifert, he was so strong he broke free. He runs out of the business, and he was met by Joey Hansen and Tony Spilatro. They shotgun blast him. John Feccarata was the getaway driver. But that hit team killed Danny Seifert because he was going to blow the lid on the Teamsters pension fund. Joe Lombardo was found guilty of taking part in that murder. Or Michael Cagnoni, a trucking executive. Now, this guy was paying the outfit for years on time. They never had a problem with him. But Joe Ferriola wanted to continue to receive payments the way he was. Michael Cagnoni could no longer pay him in cash. And it was in best interests of the outfit and Michael Cagnoni to do a different type of a payment system. But Ferriola, some of these old grease balls, they're set in their ways. Michael Cagnoni couldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. He would not listen. He was warned a few times. Nikki Calabrese testified to the careful planning and how hard it was to kill Michael Cagnoni. They eventually blew up Michael Cagnoni going onto a ramp of 294. But this is one of over 1,000 victims of the Chicago outfit. Other guys ended up in the trunk. And look at Butch Petroselli from the Wild Bunch, very close with Harry Alleman. Some people think Butchie was killed because he was stealing money when Harry was away. But some people think, according to Nick, Butchie and his friends were out showboating, bragging, playing the role on Rush Street. He threw a major party with hookers and cocaine, a major Christmas party. When Nick Calabrese and Frank Calabrese would talk about it, about the Butch Petroselli murder, they would pinch their left cheek saying Spacone, meaning like a big shot. But that's one of the reasons Butch Petroselli and Tony Borsellino were killed, is they were showboating. They weren't keeping a low profile. Some of these guys, like Tony Spilatro, would have been better off going to jail. If it wasn't for his lawyer, Oscar Goodman, he would have went to jail, got convicted many times. But I bring this up because this is how two of the bookies, Robert Plummer and Hal Smith, were tortured, strangled, and killed by the Chicago outfit. So the old saying, pay, quit, or die. Chicago outfit, as we talked about, made millions of dollars in their prime. Extortion, gambling, unions, legitimate businesses, loan sharking. But in the 150 plus stories that I did, you never hear me talking about drugs. Unlike New York, Philly, Boston, Detroit, they were all involved in drugs. A lot of the New York bosses swore that their crews weren't selling drugs, but there's just too much money, millions of dollars for them to turn their head. But the Chicago outfit, the vast majority of them were not involved in drugs, with the exception of maybe Michael Spilatro, who was eventually dealt with, and maybe Tony Spilatro and his crew doing a little blow in Vegas. But for the most part, in all the trials I went to, there's not a whole lot of drugs being talked about. They really weren't involved in that. And if you were, I forget the guy's name. One guy, Cardi, I think his name. He's either a cop or an outfit associate. But he spent time in prison. When he got out, Tony Accardo had him brutally killed in front of people just to send a message that Chicago outfit is not involved in drugs. We didn't poison our cities and suburbs like some of the other families did. Now, here's what brought down the Chicago outfit to me. Unlike Philly, Boston, and New York, where everybody was killing each other, ranting against each other, Chicago outfit had the least amount of informants, second to Detroit. I think Detroit, who was a lot smaller, had the least amount of snitches. However, the half a dozen rat snitches, lowlife that the Chicago outfit did have combined took down the entire Chicago outfit. If it wasn't for some of these informants, I believe the Chicago outfit would still be active today. We're going to talk about this guy. One of the worst human beings I've ever laid eyes on, a real nasty man. I said it before. I swear to God, I'd rather go out and smoke cigars and drink with the Menendez brothers, O.J. Simpson, Saddam Hussein, and Osama bin Laden than this guy. Jewish gangster Lenny Patrick. He testified against Gus Alex. He actually wore a wire on him at Northwestern Memorial Hospital when they would use the doctors as conduits to send and receive messages. He testified again at the Sam Carlisi crew trial. His testimony brought down the entire Carlisi crew and sent Gus Alex to prison. This guy participated in a dozen murders, over 100 armed bank robberies, and for his cooperation, he gets a slap on the wrist. He was afraid to die in jail. But his testimony sent away Gus Alex and the whole entire Sam Carlisi crew. Now here, this guy probably did the most damage. Crooked cop, corrupt lawyer, degenerate gambler, alcoholic cokehead, and lowlife. Rat snitch, mob guy wannabe. He got tired of being verbally, physically abused by these guys. He decided to flip and cooperate and actually wore a wire against Harry Allman and Butchie. Imagine if the Wild Bunch crew would have got a hold of Bob Cooley. This man is still alive today. I don't know how he lives with himself, but he actually brought down the entire First Ward. As we said it before, the entire First Ward controlled everything in the city. Once the Chicago outfit lost the powerful First Ward, that was the end of the mob. That was the end of the Chicago mob. This one man destroyed the Chicago outfit. They lost all their corrupt judges, all their corrupt cops. He brought it all down by wearing a wire. Right up there with Lenny Patrick, public enemy number 2 is B.J. Jehoda. And one thing I learned listening to B.J. Jehoda testify against Bobby Salerno is, whether outfit guys want to admit it or not, some of these outfit guys, wise guys and associates, they do business, associate, and hang out with lowlifes. You got to be careful who your friends are. And that was quite obvious to me during the Good Ship Lollipop trial and the Bobby Salerno trial that Rocky's crew trusted B.J. Jehoda. He was a lieutenant in their gambling operation. He went on vacation with them. He worked with them. He did work with them. He set up 2 of his friends to get murdered. This lowlife, same thing, didn't want to pay his gambling debt, didn't want to go to jail, decided to rat on his entire crew, and even wore a wire. He's so lucky Rocky and the crew didn't get a hold of him. But his testimony brought down a lot of good men. Rocky's entire crew got convicted. But what these informants don't realize It's the other families that are destroyed as well. Now here, Junior, right? He testified he got sick of his father physically and verbally abusing him. He planned to steal all his father's money and have him locked up for life. He went to the law library, wore gloves, and typed a letter to the FBI agent asking him to come out. He wanted to cooperate against his father. And that's exactly what he did. Now, Junior will tell you he didn't want to bring down the entire Chicago outfit. He just wanted to lock his father up for life. But that's exactly what he did. He destroyed a lot of his friends, people he grew up with, including his own brother, Kurt. He destroyed a lot of families along the way. Now this guy's doing tours, looking for a movie deal, giving interviews, writing books. But imagine testifying and wearing a wire against your own father. But without Junior's letter, there would definitely never have been a family secrets trial. And then to top it off, you got Nick Calabrese, right? At first, Nick Calabrese left Jimmy Marcello out of the Spilatro murders. Then he decided to tell the truth. But it was his testimony. Even though Jimmy Marcello took care of his family, it was his testimony that helped convict Jimmy Marcello and the rest of the defendants. Nick Calabrese is the only made member to testify in court against the Chicago outfit. He testified to 14 unsolved murders going back to 1970. Without his testimony, without Junior, without Blowjob Jehoda, without the corrupt lawyer or Lenny Patrick, Chicago outfit would be alive and well. But through informants, the government getting stronger and stronger with technology, all the Chicago outfit heavyweights, associates have been killed, locked up, no longer around. The few that are left have retired, the last of the Mohicans. So to answer your question, who's the boss of Chicago outfit? There is no boss. I don't know. Who's active? I have no idea. Is the mob still around? No. Those days are long gone. Chicago outfit, that story is over. They had a hell of a run. Nothing lasts forever. If you like my Chicago mob trial stories, please hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. And for you haters out there, put down the drink. Go walk to the corner store and buy your old lady a pack of cigarettes. Ciao. Have a good weekend.